Everyone, and welcome to our final session of the Critical Issues Symposium. Before we welcome Zachary Adams to the stage, I would like to take time to thank all of you for attending this event. We hope that you learn more about artificial intelligence and that it can be translated into your lives and future. I am so grateful to be the director for this year's symposium and to have the opportunity to work alongside Dr. Griffin and Dr. Krause, as well as having the most amazing executive board. Without them, this event truly wouldn't have been the same. I would also like to thank all of our speakers for being a part of this event as well. I'm grateful that they were able to share their knowledge and experience with you today. In this endnote, Zach Adams invites us to reflect on how artificial intelligence is reshaping the way we learn, teach, and understand knowledge itself. Drawing on personal stories from the 1990s when games like Cow Wars and Zelda shaped his early experiences with technology, Adams connects nostalgia with the pressing questions of today's classrooms and workplaces. Grounded in the ideas of Michael P. Lynch's The Internet of Us and Ethan Mollick's Co-Intelligence, Adams explores the needs for reliable sources, reasoned thinking, and meaningful collaboration with AI as a coworker, co-teacher, and a coach. Throughout vivid metaphors like magic eye stereograms, he challenges us to see beyond the surface and engage more deeply with the opportunities and complexities of artificial intelligence. Please join me in welcoming Zachary Adams to the stage as he helps us reimagine not just how we use AI, but how we partner with it in our ongoing pursuit of knowledge. Thank you.
Well, hello everyone. Thank you for coming to today's endnote, and thank you especially to the Critical Issues Symposium Committee for allowing me to be this endnote speaker. I'm so glad and I'm honored to be able to share my own knowledge with you today through my learned experiences, but also that we get to do this collectively and collaboratively moving forward with continued discussion and engagement and practice, not only in our classrooms, but in our research and with other talks that we'll have throughout the year. Before I get into my talk today, as I was preparing, I started to think about, Zach, you don't teach this many people on a regular basis. Like, how are you going to prepare to do this? And I reminded myself, well, it's about AI. Why don't I just get AI to motivate me to do the talk and present to all those in the room today? So if you would, please listen to my motivated AI.
You're stepping onto the stage to do more than just speak. You're here to unveil a new way of thinking, one that blends the magic of the past with the promise of the future. Remember, the tools we use are just that, tools. They were artists in how we choose to see, to connect, and to inspire curiosity in others. So go out there, share your story, and remind everyone that the journey to knowledge is as much about perspective as it is about technology.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate that. I am thoroughly motivated to now give a wonderful endnote address. I have to admit that when I thought about giving an endnote address, there was one person that came to my mind as I was preparing this, and it was Steve Jobs. I was thinking back to as a kid watching the Apple keynote speeches about new technologies or new programs coming out, and I started thinking about what would Steve Jobs say to me? How would he help me prepare? Should I buy a turtleneck? Should I buy Levi jeans and wear white New Balance shoes? I don't have those things, so I wouldn't have been able to do that. But I wanted to get some feedback and advice about what I should say and how I should approach today's topic. And I asked ChatGPT to write me a speech in the style of Steve Jobs. It was really bad, obviously, as you could hear. The voice is pretty creepy, too, so I kept that as short as possible. Throughout today's talk, I'm going to highlight ways that I think about, I use, and I contemplate where AI can assist me in my work, in my teaching, and in my research. I'm going to be transparent that AI did some of the work for me today, that I collaborated with AI along the way, and there are going to be times where I didn't want to integrate AI at all. But before we get any further into the journey about how I use AI and how I think it's impacting my knowledge and all of our knowledge, I have to take time to thank people along the way. I need to thank my parents, John and Paula, because they raised me in an environment with technology at a super early age. Raise your hand if you grew up in a household with a rotary phone. Awesome. You are my favorite people in the room. All right. They raised me in a place where I could play, I could investigate, I could dream, I could understand, I could struggle. And that started with calling family and friends on a rotary phone. Now, for those of you that didn't raise your hand, you will never know the struggle of trying to dial someone's phone number using that type of technology. Right? I also need to thank my dad for letting me use some of his old computers from his office that he no longer wanted. I got to take those home and dismantle them and put them back together and play the games that I don't know how we got access to these games, but we eventually did on a 3.5 size floppy disk. And we'll talk about those along the way too. I need to thank my brother Kyle, because I'm going to talk to you about a game called Zelda, and it was this game specifically on the Nintendo 64 that Kyle would often remind me it was his Nintendo 64, and I would be lucky enough for him to let me play. So I need to thank him for being that guide, for being the person that would show me how to play these games, but ultimately I would lose to him in these games, whether it was 007 GoldenEye, racing jet skis in Wave Race, or competing in missions and Quest and Zelda. So thank you, Kyle, for letting me play with that technology. I wouldn't be where I am, and I wouldn't teach what I teach if it wasn't for some of the professors here in this room, for professors that are retired. Early on in my career at Hope, I took a wonderful class called Ed Psych with Professor Dr. Tony Donk. And it was him that taught me some of the theories of learning and those that came before us to understand what it means to truly learn and understand and to teach and to move forward in our learning together. It was also Dr. Tony Donk that allowed me to question whether we would be allowed to use technology on assignment or not. And by asking these questions, that led us into doing research to try to figure out when should and how technology should enter the classroom. So thank you, Tony, for being a mentor, a friend, a guide, a teacher, a collaborator. And this was me actually presenting at Kirka back in 2014. I need to say a special thank you to my wife, Katie, for not only being here today, but for supporting me along the way from when we were freshmen here at Hope to now being a professor here at Hope. You encourage me, you support me, you put me through my master's program, so thank you for doing that, because that's what allows me to do what I do today. And thank you for just being my life partner. And lastly, I need to thank my son, Beckham, because it's Beckham that has taught me to look at learning a different way. Right? I used to teach kindergarten, I used to teach middle school, now I teach in higher ed, but Beckham has shown me what it looks like and what it means to learn a completely different way than I've ever thought about. And if and how and why I would want AI to influence his education or not. So thank you, Beckham. Now that all those thank yous are out of the way with those that have been in my life before, I also need to thank those people that have done the hard work before I did the hard work. People like Ethan Mollick, author of Co-Intelligence, Living and Working with AI, and people like Michael Patrick Lynch, a philosopher who's written the book, The Internet of Us. It is because of them and their expertise that I'm able to build upon their knowledge and build upon their understanding and combine it with my own that allows me to speak to you today. So again, I wouldn't be here on my own. I wouldn't be here speaking to you about AI if it wasn't for the people in my life and the people that have been far from me who study these topics that I can build on. So thank you, both Ethan and Michael, for doing the work before me. There's one last thing I need to be fully transparent on. Like I said before, I used AI to make this presentation. Now, I didn't put every single slide together. It didn't write the stories about the loved ones that I have in my life that have inspired me along the way, but I did consult AI to make certain things. And one of the things that I consulted AI to do was do that motivational speech. It didn't really land, right? I wasn't super motivated after hearing it. But I also asked it to make images for me. Images in the style of the arcade games that I loved playing growing up. Images in the style of adventure and fun. But it's Ethan Mollick in his book, Living and Working with AI, that he's taught us how to collaborate with AI and how we approach it in two different ways. He talks about working with AI as a centaur, where as a human half, you do things completely on your own and completely human without the use of artificial intelligence or without the use of technology. And then there's this other part that you offload to the AI and let it do for you. And one of those examples is creating this image. I had the idea of what I wanted the image to look like, but I didn't have the time or the ability to put it in that specific style, so I crafted the best prompt to put into ChatGPT and then allowed ChatGPT to use its algorithm magic in the back to create these wonderful photos. Now, the first centaur image it gave me was awful, too mystical, and didn't fit the style that I wanted completely. But that's an example of ways that you can collaborate and be a partner with the use of AI, is treating it like it's centaur, deciding for yourself what task is going to be completely you and what task is going to be completely AI. The other way that I engage with AI in the preparation for this presentation is as a cyborg. And the way that Ethan describes a cyborg is that there is no clear line. It's more this jagged edge where you don't know where you have been doing the work or what AI has been doing the work, but it's this back and forth constant creation. And the way I did that is by practicing for this speech. Now, earlier, I gave this exact speech to a room full of avatars. And I have to say, they gave me a standing ovation. So I'm expecting, no, they only did that because I checked the box in the program to get the standing ovation, right? But this is exactly what it looks like to practice in front of AI. I uploaded my slide deck. You can kind of see it back there in the background, right? My title slide. And I'm presenting to a full room of intrigued audience members that sneeze every once in a while, just to make it feel a little bit more real. But at the end of this, they asked me questions based on my presentation, based on what I say and how I deliver the message. But that wasn't the only way that I used AI. It also gave me a report. How persuasive was I? How well was my presentation structured, right? Was my content clear? And how appealing did it sound? Right, so this is a new way that we can engage with artificial intelligence, not to do the work for us, but to give us that deliberate feedback, and then we can engage in deliberate practice along the way. If you're interested, we have this program on 16 virtual reality headsets that are available to you as Hope College members, both faculty and students, and it's great for interview practice as well, or if you need to practice teaching in front of your students. So like I said, I'm being as transparent as I can. I used AI, I consulted AI, I created with AI, but that is not what I want to focus on today. I want to focus on when we don't necessarily want to engage with AI, and that we have this choice to opt out, to say no, and to remain completely human in our work and in our creation and our relations. So I need to tell you about a kid growing up in the late 1900s. Now, I say that because that's really when I grew up, was the late 1900s, which is a weird thing to say, but it was 1990s, and if you can imagine, the 1990s were a wonderful time to be alive, specifically elementary school. Now, if you had the opportunity to go to a public elementary school, you might start thinking back to the sights, the sounds, the smells of the particular water fountain that you didn't want to drink from because it smelled and tasted like pennies. But there was usually about 2 times a year that elementary school was just amazing. There were 2 times a year where you would walk into the building and sometimes the library might be closed for a week. Sometimes the gymnasium might have been taken over by something, or they could have even sectioned off a part of the cafeteria. And I knew this time of the year was coming around because in the hallway, we would see these big metal cases show up. And I knew that meant the Scholastic Book Fair was at our school. And I would be so excited to go to the Scholastic Book Fair, right? The way it worked at my school is the classroom got a browsing day and then a shopping day. Right, so you go into the Scholastic Book Fair, you're browsing, and you'd be so excited to see the spin display of the Goosebumps books, right? Anyone looking at those? Or you might have gone and you would have seen maybe the I Spy books. You remember those? Those were great. I have to confess, though, I didn't necessarily love the books at the Scholastic Book Fair. I was more interested in seeing the posters that would be at the Scholastic Book Fair. The posters would be this amazing newest Ferrari or a Lamborghini, or it's Michael Jordan dunking on someone, or Ken Griffey Jr. hitting a home run. Those were the things I wanted to be able to go back to mom and dad and say, hey, I found all these books I want to buy. Our shopping days on Thursday, can I have the money to go buy these books? But in reality, I have on my list, I want to get this poster that I want to hang up in my room, right? But it wasn't just the sports posters or the sports cars that were intriguing to me. There was another poster that caught my eye. And it looked something like this. Who remembers the Magic Eye pictures? Or the stereograms is the real world. Now, these were popular in the 90s. There's even an episode of Seinfeld where Kramer is trying to figure out what's in this picture, and Mr. Pitt is refocusing his eyes and unfocusing and crossing them, and he doesn't see what Kramer sees, right? These were the things that I got excited about because there was this chaos and this mess and this confusion and this color and this fuzziness that someone said, if you look close enough, there's going to be a shark in that picture, or there might be a 3D UFO or something's going to be in it, but you couldn't always tell what was happening, right? I loved being able to look at these posters, and sometimes they came in a collection, in a book where you had multiple of these to look through, but this is like looking at AI. On the front is this fuzzy blurriness, chaos of a message, but what's happening underneath? What's the real picture that's trying to be developed? And through today's talk, I hope you will be able to refocus and change your perspective and think differently about AI to see the message behind. So, as a kid growing up in the 90s, I talked about that computer that I got to take home from my dad's office and play games on. And the first game I remember playing was a game called Cow War. Now, I know it sounds pretty ridiculous, but it was a really fun game. I remember going to my room and starting my computer that looked something like that. I would put that floppy disk, which was my version of the World Wide Web, into the slot, and I would be greeted with the terminal window. Do you want to start your program Y or in? Yes or no? Of course, yes. I want to play Cow War. Right? So I start the game, and when I start the game, I get two options. That's all you get for this. You get to be Farmer Dan or Farmer Stan. Right? I'm going to pick Farmer Stan in this case. Your goal, super simple, throw your cow to hit the other farmer's barn. If you hit their barn, it blows up. Great, you win the game. Now, as a 6, 7, or 8-year-old, I didn't know what that meant. Right? The way it works is you get to choose the angle, you get to choose the speed. As a 6, 7, 8-year-old, I don't know what angles are. Right? I don't know that 1 to 90, how to get it to fly across the screen to hit this other barn. The other option is you get to throw your cow 1 mile an hour to 400 miles an hour. How are you supposed to figure this out and get it to hit that barn? I was learning through trial and error. I would put a number for angle, see how far my cow went, change the number for speed. Oh, I got a little closer, but didn't quite hit it. I would do this over and over and over again. And what happens is once you hit the barn once, the picture changes. You get a different hill to go over. So now you got to adjust your angle or adjust your speed. Now, throwing a cow at 400 miles an hour, that's exhilarating. So if you want a thrill, go home and try playing Cow War, all right? But what's going on here is I was learning by failing. I was learning by making mistakes, and I didn't have a YouTube channel to watch to figure out how to do this correctly the first time. I was messing up along the way and eventually figuring out, hey, if I put this angle and this speed, I'm going to hit Farmer Dan's barn every single time. I'm going to win. So that was early in the 90s. But then this amazing new technology came out in the form of a Nintendo 64. Anyone have a Nintendo 64 growing up to play that? Okay, some of you. Now it's like cool and ironic and nostalgic to have that as a kid, which is kind of funny. When this came out, I think it was 1998 that this game came out. So I'm 8 years old. I spent a couple of years perfecting my craft of throwing cows, and now this game comes out, and it's completely different. And as I said before, this was my brother's device. I would be lucky enough if I got to play it with him, but usually it was him beating me up in whatever game we're playing. This changed the whole dynamic between my brother and I playing video games. It went from us competing against each other to learning from one another. As Zelda, you could only play the character Link, and they're going through this quest, through the mystical world of, I can't remember what it is, but you can see a map there, all right? And eventually along the way, you meet these characters that give you hints and give you direction about where you should go or what you should do, and you also get to ride a horse, which is pretty fun, and play music on a flute or whatever the instrument that Link is playing. But the game was new to my brother Kyle. It was completely new to me. I was learning how to play the system. He was learning how to play the game. And so we needed additional help. We needed guidance. And it came in the form of that book, the Zelda Player's Guide. And this book was curated by those that made the game, those that played the game before, those that conquered the quest and defeated the evil character at the end. So we would look at the book and we would play the quest and we would fail, and then I would try and he would get mad at me because I'm not doing it correctly. But we were learning together. My brother became a more knowledgeable other, but we also needed a more knowledgeable other to go forward in the game. So if you're following me here, technology, I tried and failed on my own. I was learning alone. And now this new technology came out where my brother and I were helping one another move forward in these quests. But we still needed help to move forward as well. And that came in the form of the Player's Guide. This term, more knowledgeable other, is not new. This doesn't come around because of this invention of ChatGPT. It's been here for a really long time, specifically the 1930s. I remember being a freshman here at Hope, taking Ed Psych in Graves Hall with Professor Tony Donkin. He would talk to us about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and also Vygotsky's theory of learning and zone of proximal development, and how we don't really learn unless something's like perfectly in the middle of our zone of proximal development. We're not going to learn if something's too easy. We're probably just going to skim past it and not try, right? We're not going to learn if something's too difficult. We'll get to a level of frustration, we'll stop, and we'll just give up. But that zone of proximal development where something is just challenging enough that you can fail and you can move forward and you can try again. And often in that zone, you are working with someone known as a more knowledgeable other. You're working with a guide, you're working with a teacher, you're working with a peer that knows just a little bit more than you to help you along the way. It can take the form of a person. It can take the form of a peer. It can also take the form of a tool that has a greater skill or knowledge. But it's not age dependent. The beauty of education is that we can teach our students, but our students can teach us as well. I was reminded of this idea when I was thinking about this presentation when it comes to more knowledgeable other in technology, and I started thinking about my son Beckham, who's 3 years old, and he is my more knowledgeable other when it comes to Paw Patrol. He knows the characters, he knows the problems, he knows why Mayor Humdinger is doing the things that he's doing and why the Paw Patrol have to stop him from doing that. But he also has this uncanny ability to recognize Andy Grammer songs. He has this ability to hear the first note or first line in the song, and he says, "Daddy, that's magic." And I'm like, how do you know this? "Daddy, that's Monster." And it happens to be that song. I don't have this ability. Becca, my 3-year-old, is my more knowledgeable other when it comes to so many different things. And that's the way we should also think about our students in our class, that they can be a more knowledgeable other for us when it comes to new perspectives, new ideas, new technologies, new approaches to those technologies, and how we enter the workforce, right? But what does that mean for today? If a more knowledgeable other is that person, is that peer, is that teacher, what does that mean for us today when we're now being introduced to a technology that portrays itself to be a more knowledgeable other? We heard earlier from Jose that AI can do things better than some humans. It can make images better than I can make images. It can ask interview questions better than I can ask interview questions. So what does that mean if we're going to consult with that tool as a more knowledgeable other? And when I started to think about that, I also started to think about, well, our more knowledgeable others have changed over time because of any advancement in technology. My brother was my more knowledgeable other when we played Zelda. He sat next to me and he helped guide me. We used a player guides book to move forward. But now, when it comes to learning, our more knowledgeable other doesn't have to sit directly next to us. We can consult them 24/7 in the form of YouTube videos. Right? We can watch a video, fix the light that's in our house. We can watch the video, try to change the oil in our car. We can watch the video to learn how to play a certain game. We can consult YouTube anytime we want. That can be a form of a more knowledgeable other. And the importance here is that it's a real person, it's a real voice that has shared wisdom that we can consult. A more knowledgeable other can also take the form of podcasts. I listen to the Teacher in Higher Ed podcast all the time to consult more knowledgeable others that have come before me and that do the work that I don't do, and I can learn from them. They can take the form of a friend's group chat. Hey, you missed the study session today. Here's what you missed. Hey, you missed class today. Here's the materials that were covered. Hey, you need to focus on these things for the test that's happening tomorrow. So more knowledgeable others can take that form as well. When I was practicing and thinking about what I wanted to say to you today, I also got reminded that a more knowledgeable other can take the form of a guided app. A couple years ago, my wife and I went to Charleston for vacation, and you can have the ability to go on tours in Charleston and actually get a tour guide. We use an app. And we could walk through the city, and when we got to a specific location, the app would talk to us and tell us what we're seeing and what we're visiting. And I realized that was a form of a more knowledgeable other. An expert created and crafted the app and the experience for us. But it can also take the form of a running app. When I was practicing and thinking about what I wanted to say, I would often go on runs to kind of construct what was going to happen. And so I like to use the Nike running app. And in the running app, there's Coach Bennett. Coach Bennett will guide me through my run. He'll tell me what I want to work on or what I should be focusing on. He'll give me things to focus on in the midst of the run if I get too tired. But I was reminded that Coach Bennett isn't here lacing up his shoes next to me. He's not doing the stretch before or after the run with me. He's not dealing with the muscle soreness after the run, but he's still a more knowledgeable other. He's the expert. He's the coach that's coached the other athletes. He's the one that knows how to think about running going forward. AI can't always do that. Yes, it's going to present information to you quickly, and it's going to look factual, and it's going to come across as this well-polished form, but it can't always be that more knowledgeable other. It doesn't always have the context needed to fit you where you're at. So we should always rely on our human, more knowledgeable others as well. But AI is only going to get better. The AI we're using today is the worst AI we'll ever use in our life. Tomorrow, it's going to be better. Next week, it's going to be better than that. Next year, we probably won't even be able to distinguish between what's a real image or an AI-created image? Has anyone taken the quiz in the library determining if an AI-created image is real or not? Right. Tools like ChatGPT, Notebook LM, or Napkin AI can present themselves as being intelligent guides, but there is an aspect that is missing. They do lack wisdom. They might have factual information, but factual information does not always result in wisdom. Right? They miss out on nuance, how to adapt a message in real time to fit the audience. Right? And they lack that personal connection. That is what is so beautiful about being here at Hope, is that you have the opportunity to be guided by professors and mentors and peers in real person. Right? You're not doing your learning online. You're not engaging with videos to learn all the information. You have the people right here on campus with you that can help guide you along the way. So is AI the new, more knowledgeable other? Is it the thing that we're always going to go back to learn and understand and figure things out for the first time? If that's the question we're asking, we also need to ask ourselves the question, how do we even know what we know? Right? Michael Patrick Lynch describes the way of us knowing comes in threes. We know and we understand by consulting reliable sources. The Zelda Player's Guide was my reliable source. My brother was my reliable source when it came to playing the game. When we consult with AI, we have to ask it, as Jose said earlier, show me your sources. Where did you get the information? Prove that you're correct. On a scale of 1 to 5, how accurate are you here? I never once did that when I was playing Zelda with my brother or consulting the guide. I didn't think, is this made up? Is this map even real? Does it connect to what we're doing here? Michael also describes a way of knowing is that we have lived out experiences, and through those experiences, we develop reasoning and understanding and thoughtfulness. When I was playing Cow War, every time I made a mistake, I learned from that mistake, and I was able to make an adjustment to figure out how to destroy the barn. Does AI do that? Does AI give us this lived out real experience? Does it allow us to make mistakes? Or does it simply mask its own mistakes to portray itself as truth? How do we ask it better questions? And does it make us, in return, be more reflective and ask better questions? The third way is grasping the big picture. Earlier, I showed you that stereogram, the fuzziness, the blurriness, the thing that sometimes it's hard to uncover. Is AI help us see what's behind that picture? Or does it distort what we're looking at to begin with? The people in this room, your professors, your mentors, your guides, they allow you to change your perspective, to think deeply about something, to think critically about something. And as you work with them, they help you see it from different angles. Now, Jose talked about that we can get AI to do those things, but how do you know what questions to ask AI to show you a different perspective? Right? Here at Hope, you're learning how to do that with your Christian liberal arts education. That what you do in one class will be a perspective that might assist you in another class. And you're making those connections along the way. You're trying to see the forest through the trees. One of the quotes that I love from the Internet of Us is that Michael says, understanding cannot be outsourced. Understanding cannot be outsourced. Your understanding is something that you can't outsource to AI, but understanding is important because it leads to explanations, and explanations are important because explanations matter. When we get information from AI, it will portray it in this long-form text. And there's been studies that show that the longer the text is that AI generates, the more likely we are to believe what it says. Right? So understanding demands that we are able to explain it. Explanations matter. our understanding matters, and are we going to outsource that to AI? I described earlier the ways of knowing have changed from when I was a kid in the 90s playing these games to now, that as a kid, the reliable sources we were able to identify, and they were easy to consult, but now it's getting even more difficult to know what is real, what is true, when AI can make something look like a real article or a real source or author. And it's important for us to be able to distinguish between those things. AI even has the ability to show you its reasoning, show you its thinking, but it's up to us to then decide, is that appropriate for the work that we're doing? Jose talked about telling his AI that he needed it to give a scale of 1 to 5. But it's only because he knows how it operates that he was able to give that instruction. I also tell my ChatGPT to give me a confidence rating from 1 to 10. I'll tell you, it rarely lacks confidence. But it does mess up a lot. Okay? The last one, with grasping the pictures, AI is very quick at giving you an answer. But is that what we're here to do, is get answers quickly? Or are we trying to slow down, to reflect, to contemplate, to be a critical examiner and critical thinker of the information that's being presented? We don't need more answers quickly. We need more time. And does using the AI give us more time, or just give us more time to do more work? So who's here to help us focus or refocus? Who are the things that we're going to consult? Who are the people that we're going to approach when we're looking at this blurry mess? Are we going to ask ChatGPT to solve the fuzzy picture for us? Are we going to put in the resources to Notebook LM and tell it to make a podcast so I can listen quickly before I get to class, so I can convey the feeling that I understand the material to my professor? Or do we need someone to sit down next to us to say, it's okay, look at it differently, approach it this way, think about it from this perspective? Are we going to be the disconnected brain that relies on our more knowledge of others? Or are we going to be the brain that is so consumed with being connected to a device or the AI that we won't know what's real or not? I think what's important is not the new AI tool that's going to come out tomorrow or next week, or the new model that OpenAI might introduce. What's important are the human, more knowledgeable others that you have worked with throughout your time in your life. They can show us moral judgment. They can display empathy that AI can't. Right? They can share their lived experience to provide you steps to move forward in your own career. Right? I think what's important and why you probably chose to come to Hope for your higher educational learning institution is that you wanted a lived in-person experience. You didn't want to learn online. You didn't want to learn from a machine, but you wanted to learn from people, because learning is social. It's not just informational. It's not just transactional. It is relationship building. And real growth comes from that relationship. So when we engage with these tools, when we engage with this technology, and we're working with our human, more knowledgeable others, they're helping us ask better questions. AI is really good at giving answers to those questions, but we need to ask better ones, more difficult ones. Right? Jose said that AI is really great at coming up with ideas. We need better questions for better ideas. We also need to know how to validate sources. Right? What I love working in the library is I get to rub shoulders with people who are experts at validating those sources, and that they're not just going to turn to Google and say, hey, is this a true article or not? Right? They can help us along the way. I think what we need to do as faculty members and as professors is understand, how does AI think about our discipline? And how do we model that thinking for our students. That doesn't mean telling them to use the tool. That doesn't mean getting on ChatGPT together as a class, but explaining how does it change the way of knowing our discipline specifically. So that when we get an output, when we get a response, we can think about it critically and we can examine and analyze it well. And the last thing that I'll say is that it's important that we become lifelong learners. You have the opportunity as someone that came to Hope to think not just in one discipline, but in a multitude of disciplines, to see it from an angle of a humanities and as a STEM, as an artist and as a philosopher. You have the ability to think in disciplines creatively, not just from one vantage point. So stay rooted in that. Stay rooted in being a lifelong learner. So no matter how the technology changes over time, you can adapt quickly to that technology. That's what's going to set you apart when you do an interview and you showcase what you can do instead of the AI. So it's your turn. As we approach this era of AI, specifically in learning, it's your turn to start designing your own quest, to start collecting those more knowledgeable others along the way, to lean on them and expect more from them, because they do have something that the AI doesn't. As I said before, they have that moral judgment, they have that empathy, they have that lived experience. So don't follow my quest, don't follow the quest of someone next to you, but design the quest yourself. Use AI as a tool, don't use it as your compass. Let character lead you forward, let thoughtfulness help you move forward. So as we go out today, build wisdom, collect knowledge, but as your journey starts now. Thank you. I think there's a couple minutes for questions. If you have questions, you can either come down to the mic up here, or I don't know if there's another mic somewhere else. I also know that you've probably be in a bunch of rooms today learning about AI. Maybe that means you want to go actually explore some of the things you learned today. Or you're probably all just itching to Google Cow War and try to destroy those barns. So I'll be happy to take any questions if you have any. Yes, awesome. Say that again? My favorite Zelda games? Oh my gosh, I don't know. Like I said before, Kyle was the one that got to actually play, and I would just watch. Yes, that was the only one that I remember playing as a kid, but now I'm sure there's so many different quests to go through. But yeah. Any other questions? All the way in the back. Okay, great question. So the question was practical guidelines of how to work with AI, knowing its limitations or not being as dependent on it. Ethan Mollick has a great description of this in his book. Before engaging with any AI, decide for yourself, what is a task that is going to be a solely you human task? What is something that you're okay with offloading to AI? Or what is something that you would be completely fine with eventually having an AI agent doing for you? And once you've created those list of tasks that you have decided this is solely something I'm going to do because I think this is important, or what are the things that I'm going to offload, then you can start engaging with a specific tool. And I don't believe that there's just one AI to rule them all, right? The one that's best this week is probably not going to be the one that's best next week. But start by making that list of things of where do you draw the line of what's acceptable use or not. But then engage in conversations with those around you to say, what makes sense for our discipline to do in terms of AI. You might be reading or writing for a specific journal. The journal is going to dictate if it's allowing AI to be incorporated in some of the work or not. So that's a wonderful question. I think for me, I decide to opt out of technology more often than not. I don't have social media. I don't use technology for specific things, but then other things that I'm all in on. Right? Things that I like to engage and play with so I can figure out how does it impact learning and understanding. So, great question. Any other questions? Yes?
I know you discussed about how it depends on the individual, but do you think there is a certain line between like the centaur and the cyborg? Like, do you think there is like a certain point to where you are using it so much that you are like a cyborg? Like, is there like a basis line, or is it really just dependent on each person?
Yes. So, question of, is there a line between being a cyborg and does it cross a line at some point, whether it's for all of humanity or if it's for us as individuals? I think it is individually based, right? If we think about universal design for learning and being able to have assistive technologies, there are certain technologies that I could use but don't make sense for me to use because of the abilities I have, but help others be able to communicate and function and participate in certain environments. I mean, you would classify them as cyborgs if you think about their technology use. In terms of AI specifically, I hope through my talk that I was able to highlight the importance of human connection and relationships. And so my argument is that I want to hold on to the analog as much as possible because of how beautiful those things are and not offload to the digital. So again, you got to draw the line for yourself, whether it's your company is going to draw the line for you, your faith might draw the line for you, the learning environment might draw the line for you, but you got to wrestle with that question yourself as well. Yeah. Yes?
You kind of keep saying like us drawing lines, or kind of it made me think about young children. They have way more access to the internet and way more access to these things. They probably know more about it than I do because that's what their lives are consumed about. So I guess I'm wondering where should the guidelines be for them, and should they even have access to this type of machinery at such a young age?
That's a good question. I think one of the things that I was able to do as a student at Hope and then as a elementary teacher was understand how technologies get modeled for young kids, right? And when I taught kindergarten, I would teach them how to write on their iPads. Not because I thought that was a great thing to do, but because it was a standard that a kindergarten student needed to know how to publish digitally, which is wild that that was a standard for kindergarten, but it was. So I was going to do it well, right? But we learned that students come into the classroom having been modeled how devices should be used. And so they watch their parents text on phones, watch videos, play games. So are we as adults modeling effective uses for engaging with AI because the students are going to be using them at a younger age? Or is it completely reshaping what the educational landscape is going to look like? There are schools in California and Texas that are using AI as teachers, and the adult is just a guide on the side. Now, I personally wouldn't choose for my son to go to that kind of school, but those are the questions that we're going to start having to wrestle with. How are we modeling for them, and how are we introducing them to the technology in the first place? But there should be some kind of guidance, yeah. Any other questions? Here.
In the answer a minute ago, you tangentially mentioned faith as a potential aspect of drawing a line for usage of AI. That is not the topic I had considered at all. Please expand on it.
if you saw at the beginning of my presentation, I showed Ethan Malick's book, right? And it shows the picture of the apple in the hand. And so there is this level of, are we going to be biting from the apple if we're using some of this technology? And how does that impact our relationship with our own faith, but also the understanding of, if we are created in God's image and our work that we have put out into the world has been mirrored on this AI, is that AI also created in our image? And how do we wrestle with that when it hallucinates and it shows us our bias and we don't like the bias that it is showing us? The question is, if this is part of us and we are part of God, what happened? And should we engage with it or not? But it can also help us question Scripture. It can create devotions for us to wrestle with the Scripture even more, right? So there is a level of, it can help you grow in your faith, but my argument this whole time is, find the more knowledgeable other, the human more knowledgeable other, to help you grow in those areas, not the AI. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for coming to CIS and participating in all the events. Appreciate it.